Hello, friends. Welcome back to the cabin. My name is Tim Martin with Covenant Creation on YouTube. Today I have a guest, WillyT. Welcome from Scotland.
Hello, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for hosting me today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and coming on. And I don't know if you remember this, but I tried to reach out last winter, like over a year ago, trying to get an interview with you, but we never really kind of clicked, and I got busy in the wintertime. So
That's it. I was a very shy man back then, but I've grown since.
I bet you've grown a little bit. There's something about this book, putting out this book might bring a little bit more attention to you. And
this is it.
I hear this is a really good book. So
thank you. I mean, I heard that too. It's a vicious rumor.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate for the audience. I did a book review on Preterism Ignored But Fulfilled: How the Church Missed the End of the World just a couple weeks ago. And it got a lot of attention, a lot of views. It's still getting a lot of views now, but I really enjoyed your book, Willy, and I wanted to kind of talk about your background and kind of where you are and how you came to develop this book and how long it took you.
Oh, yes.
And we can go from there. But why don't you introduce your studies and kind of your background, and we can bounce things around from there.
Certainly. So I'm a product of the Protestant Scotland. So I was baptized into the local church, the Church of Scotland. And, it comes from this tradition of Protestantism, John Knox, Calvin, a bit of Calvinism in there. And, there's all that sectarianism in Scotland and different people bickering for power plays. And, the Presbyterian model to me does seem quite democratic, but oftentimes these more liberal consequences of these actions are just the coincidental benefits from selfish ambition. That's what you find when you study history. Somebody's trying to get an angle on someone else. But that was my background. But that always seemed quite nominal. I never truly felt like I was a product of the Church of Scotland. I never really felt Protestant. My goodness, I'm not even sure what it was to feel Christian, and I'll tell you why. Because I exist in a culture that is so secular. It is incredibly secular. And I was an oddity. I was strange. People would laugh because I went to church. Nobody in my class at school went to church, So it was this peculiar thing that I was exposed to. And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing, because it brought, I'm not sure if I had these questions or if this wonderful exposure brought these questions to me, like the meaning of existence. Why are we here? What is this context? Who is God? Who's this Jesus character I'm hearing about? And as I noticed, when the year 2000 came about, I was only approaching my 12th birthday, and my friend at the time said to me, "William, I know that Jesus is not real, because Jesus said he would return in the year 2000, and he hasn't." And I remember thinking to myself, is that right? Did Jesus say he would return in the year 2000 and he hasn't? I wasn't convinced of the argument, but I could feel and sense what was going on in the culture. Futurism had deferred the hope of this 12-year-old boy, my friend at the time. And, it made me think, well, gosh, what is going on? And then, as I started to look into my faith, I guess, I'm a product of this sort of, scientism, let's call it, that took over the kind of epistemology of the West, these Enlightenment values. So I thought, right, if this is true, if religion is true, if my faith is true, there should be some kind of empirical evidence to back it up. And you know what? People have done it. The apologists have done some work to produce reasonable, logical arguments, the cosmological argument for the existence of God, etc. And I was able to find people like William Lane Craig, like John Lennon. Is it Lennon? I think it's Lennon. But they are
You're talking about
Lennox. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. Not you know. Imagine all the people.
Right. No, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So you know, Ravi Zacharias, right? There's
right.
someone topical. So you know, I found these people and I thought, right, okay, so there is something to this. But then, as I started to engage with the scripture, because that got me into the scripture, I started to remember what my 12-year-old school buddy had said about Christ's coming.
Right.
And I would find certain verses like, there are some standing here who shall not taste death until the Son of Man comes, right? And I would think to myself, well, what does that mean?
Right.
I would read Matthew 24 and it would say, and all these things shall come upon this generation, you know, and Matthew 23 says the same thing, that this judgment is coming upon that generation. And then all these imminency statements, and in Revelation 1, the book of things which must shortly come to pass, for the time is near, you know, do not seal the words of this prophecy. I was starting to see these things. And, you know, a question came into my heart. Could we be so callous? That was the way I framed it in my mind, was, could we be so callous that we were so insensitive that we missed the end? And to be honest, the question evolved over time, because it wasn't so much that we missed the end of the world in some strange science fiction type The Matrix way. It was more, we were not clued in to the full preterist worldview, because the whole ecology within which it exists was removed.
Right.
And that really began the journey of this exploration for me. So 10 years ago.
10 years ago, I was going to ask you, how long is this, you know, the time frame that you're talking about? Is that like 10 years?
Oh, yeah, this is the concentrated 10 years of full preterist investigation. My channel, you know, starts going down this avenue. I started off more apologetics, because I was inspired by the apologists, but then I realized, oh no, wait a minute, there's something really important here that people might have been overlooking.
Yeah, you must have started your YouTube channel, you know, WillyT on YouTube. I think you renamed that recently. What was the new name? Examining Preterism?
Oh yeah. So that's right. So it was just WillyT. In fact,
that's how you must have started that early, because I remember watching some of your videos probably at least 5 years ago, and maybe longer, because that would have been, you know, and I don't watch, you know, all of anybody's videos, but I remember distinctly, because my wife liked your accent. That was, she said she enjoyed the accent, but that's been a while. So you must have started your YouTube channel, you know, relatively quickly.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of good TV shows that have featured people with Scottish accents, and I'm really cashing in on that. So, but I appreciate it. I read
this book in your accent, man. It pops into my head.
I love it. But you know what? I feel the same way actually about Americans. Like, I love the American accent, because all of entertainment in Scotland is an American on the screen, and you're thinking, well, that's the language of entertainment, that's the language of storytelling, that's all these amazing characters are all American. So when Scottish children play together, they do American accents, you know, because that's the thing.
Right. Well, recently Montana has been the place to do, you know, videoing and shows, in 1923 and Yellowstone, and, you know, it goes back to, you know, a river runs through it in the 90s and stuff. So yeah, I kind of live in the middle of all that stuff. I tell you stories, but your background is fascinating, because, you know, I kind of come from the other side of a very devout religious home, multiple generations in sort of fundamentalist, evangelical, kind of independent Baptist background. But by the time I was like a teenager, I just had enough of it. And, you know, I live down south in the southeast of the United States, which is considered the Bible Belt. You know, everybody goes to church, and they have churches on every corner and stuff. And I just had enough of it. So I kind of went Presbyterian, an evangelical Presbyterian, you know, not quite the same flavor as what you're talking about there, but we studied Knox and the English Civil Wars and all of the cultural milieu that comes from. And of course, we studied in America too with the Southern Presbyterians before the American Civil War, and then Woodrow Wilson, I guess, was a trained Presbyterian minister who ended up becoming president, and he had the idea for the League of Nations, if I remember right. That was what it was called. And that was a Presbyterian idea, like exactly what you're saying. It was like democratic, but the idea is you have a League of Nations to where you have almost like Presbyterian polity applied to internationalism, right? So each country is like being represented at this group, and that kind of became the United Nations, I think, later after World War II. But it's fascinating because I grew up in a dispensational, like heavy dispensational background. My grandfather was in leadership in fundamentalist organizations. He was personal friends with Jack Van Impe back in the mid 20th century, which Van Impe was, one of those big guys with the late great Planet Earth publication and stuff like that. So that's my background, but it's fascinating to hear your background, even though culturally Presbyterian, there is a link there. It's just very different from your side of the pond, from my American fundamentals.
But there you go. And how interesting, because this touches us personally, but very quickly, just having a chat like this, you see the international and global implications of how people experience and perceive their religion. And it's affecting things like the United Nations, right, coming from a Presbyterian tradition. And it's like, well, certainly the implications for getting this right and wrong are so serious. This is not the little leagues. This is global implications.
Right. And I went to college in a very conservative Presbyterian school, which was focused on apologetics, worldview, history, theology. It was kind of a liberal arts major, but it was really heavily on the philosophy and theology side. And it's very clear that that's an inescapable link between theology and culture. I mean, it's like culture is like the manifestation of, the fundamental beliefs of a society and, leadership particularly. And, if we're talking about preterism here, we're talking about a theological revolution in my thinking. I think that came across really good in your book. And I kind of hinted that way with the Beyond Creation Science book that I wrote, back in the early 2000s. But if we see a preterist revolution theologically, don't you think that's going to transform or have effects that are pretty far reaching in worldwide culture?
Oh, fantastically so. I think that the full preterist understanding, once it is embodied, once it is lived, it will change how you interact with other people, how you perceive yourself, your relationship with God, how you should be doing community. It's just so wonderful if we can just, and I feel like I feel like we're being called to crack this thing open and get it rolling in this time. And it's, it's so fascinating to me. The subtitle of a book, How the Church Missed the End of the World, was such an important question to me, because I wanted to understand how this could be missed, because I need to demonstrate that to myself, that something like this can be missed, because if it can, then it suggests that there's something faulty with my perspective and my read on the situation. I need to go back and reassess. However, I do believe, and we don't have to get into it just now, but I do believe that I did demonstrate and did find that fracture where that break happened. And it was such a eureka moment. It was so confirming to me, because it's in the examination of what went wrong and the manifestation of those errors that you can begin to put together a picture of what can be if we get it right. So that's why it's so fascinating to me. Like, that's why the first section of my book is dedicated to this topic, because once you see how it went wrong, your imagination starts to blossom with how it could be right. And I'm excited to get into that, honestly.
Yeah, no, I as I said in my book review, I appreciate the way the book was laid out. And there was chapter 1, the Hellenization of the early church. I had come to that conclusion like a just a general outline idea, okay, that's why you miss it. You have a Greek mindset, you have a Greek worldview taking over the church. The success of the early church almost became its own downfall in that respect, because you have this conversion of all these outsiders. And so the scriptures are given to us in a Hebrew frame of mind, a relational, a covenantal like perspective. So if you just bring in Greek ideas, Hellenic mindset, you're going to miss the meaning of the scriptures. And I think that's what you were covering there in that first section of the book. And I appreciate that, because that's been my conclusion for a long time, but I don't know that I've ever seen anyone lay it out quite like you've done in detail. And I appreciate that. And I recommend this book to everybody that's listening and preterist, that it's very helpful on that front. So yeah, I think you're on the right track there. And then of course, section 2, you got into the actual biblical case for fulfillment and for preterist details that everybody asked about. For me, it was Matthew 24. Growing up as a kid in the dispensational world, we were really big into missions. I was actually on the mission field with some independent Baptist mission work down in Brazil when I was really young. Okay. And that whole idea was you go out and you convert, or you take the gospel to all the nations, like Matthew 24 says, right? And then the end will come. Matthew 24:14. That's what I grew up with, right? That was like, I remember that as a little kid. And the whole thing was designed to, do Bible translation to all the different tongues and different languages, so that the end will come and the rapture takes everybody away. So when I got, I don't know, I was probably 14, 15 years old. I was starting to really kind of read some heavier stuff. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I read something about Matthew 24 and Josephus. I started reading Josephus. And I realized when you said, this generation will not pass away until all these things fulfilled, I knew my life was over. My theological upbringing, it's over, because that was the religion. That was the religion we were raised in. So, ever since then, it's been the same thing, like on this quest. What does this mean? Right. And then you get into it, you're like, oh, this could be really promising. And I read a lot of the parallel stuff too in my work, which is more scientific based. And you have this idea of paradigms and paradigm shifts, like Thomas Kuhn's famous work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he talks about anomalies and normal science, and how it's the things that don't make sense in your world practice in science that create these, not always like just a gradual changing of theories of scientific understanding, but a complete wholesale replacement of something that comes next. Right? He laid all that out. And I see that in theology too. That's really what preterism is, like this new paradigm that's like knocking on the door, and it's getting everybody upset, and people are like shooting at you because you're an intruder or whatever. Yeah. But we're sitting at the point where you've got like all this dead forest with all these institutions that are dead ends, the international political scene, the domestic political scene. It's almost like you could get a forest fire going here with this preterism stuff that would be unstoppable if it ever really hit that critical mass level. That's kind of how my perspective on it.
You are so right. And that is the language that I feel like I have so many eureka moments when it comes to this. I remember that scientific excitement around the discovery of the Higgs boson, using those big collider things and
particle accelerators.
Right, the particle accelerators, and this Higgs boson was like the final piece of a puzzle in the standard model of physics. Not that I'm a physicist, but I was like, oh, I can get excited about that for you. But then, see when I find things like this. So Eusebius makes a statement like this. What else is Plato than Moses speaking Attic Greek? Now, it sounds like it's just a little rhetorical question, but that right there, that's the Higgs boson, because what that unveils is the parting of the ways. It demonstrates to me that in AD 70, when the Jewish leadership of the church dissolved and it became this flame that was carried, well, the vacuum was filled by Greek philosophy and the Hellenistic minds who championed it, and really they really shaped the religion of Christianity as it emerges out of that post-temple destruction, right? And it's a statement like that that reveals it all, okay?
Yeah, because that throws into question eternal conscious torment and the immortal soul doctrine that is the basis for that whole thing. You know, that was my first experience of being a heretic, is when I got rid of, you know, that eternal conscious torment. So I'm a heretic before I was a heretic, and then heretic squared or whatever. But yeah, you start seeing that mix of Plato and Christian theology stuff and how that played out in eschatology of eternal conscious torment. That's just another branch of eschatology in a systematic sense. So
yeah, big time.
fantastic.
Big time. Well, that's it. Like the Plato ideas, they tend to rob the material creation of its worth, and it's like, this is something to be shorn off. This is something lesser. This is something contaminated and bad, and the good stuff is all this metaphysical, spiritual otherness. And it's like, well, no, that's not quite right. And then the Neoplatonists come in and like, actually, there's all these emanations. There's a hierarchy between you and God. And what you're going to do is you're going to intellectualize your way toward, illuminate. You're going to enlighten yourself rationally towards God. And that's really cemented with the Stoic concepts, you know, which really just tries to get that rationality in it. Look, there's nothing wrong with rationality, but it's about balance. And they put rationality before relationship, namely covenantal relationship. And then when you see, and the letter of Aristasis, which is like the DVD commentary extras on how the Septuagint was made for was it Ptolemy II, the Egyptian king, and he wanted to read it in Greek, and so they had to the people at the time wanted to sell the Hebraic to the Greek, to the Hellenized audience, and so they create this mythology around it, which, you know, it could be true that 72 people looked at it and all came to the same translation. It was a miraculous thing. How wonderful, great. But they changed words, and it wasn't just small. Like, if you see two people fighting, you might just say, I perceive combat, but one of them could be doing Muay Thai and the other Aikido. And if you don't know the difference, it just looks like a fight. But Aikido is defensive and reactive, whereas Muay Thai is it's offensive and aggressive. So it's two different things. But if you just look at it, you might not see the subtle difference. So that's why Eusebius, an early church father, one of the great early church father historians at the time of Constantine, can say a comment like, oh, Plato's basically Moses speaking with a different accent. It's like, no, they're not the same. Because, and here's the difference. Here's the difference, right? You take something like Sheol and you replace that with Hades, you have not just translated a word. That's not what you have done, because Sheol is not a moral landscape. It's not even clear to me that there's consciousness there. It's just it's a neutral place of the dead. It's not some sorting ground.
Right.
However, Hades is very different. Hades has Tartarus. Hades has torture chambers. Hades has punishment.
As soon as you use the word Hades, you're bringing in the river Styx, and you're bringing in a lot of stuff that
so much
completely like foreign to, you know, the sort of covenantal relational understanding of creation and life incarnationally to reflect who God is. So yeah, that's a big issue for sure.
That's a big issue. And then you've got this term here, nefesh, which was the Hebrew term, changed to psyche. Now, nefesh was a much more nuanced thing. It was like the living, breathing, whole creature. It didn't have this mind-body dualism, but psyche did. It introduces mind-body dualism. Now, like, I'm someone who affirms the idea of consciousness surviving death, but I don't do it through mind-body dualism. I say you are in relation with God, and that's what you translate into, right? You're not a ghost trapped in a body in the Platonic sense, right? It's not that idea. Post-mortem consciousness exists grounded in God. It's not natural, right? Because Plato might say, oh, there's an essence, there's an essential natural immortality inside your body. That's not what I subscribe to. You know, the self persists because it's held relationally in God. So it's a nuanced idea, right? I understand that, but it's not the same because, you know, you get a concept like Sheol transformed into Hades, you get a concept like the Nefesh transformed into the psyche. You start to see even righteousness. Now, this is a good one because the idea that King David, is a man after God's heart is sometimes, it struck me actually as a scandalous thing to say because I was like, how? I've read what he did. Like, this guy doesn't seem good. But then you understand there is a difference here. There's a little something going on because the Hebrew term is tzedakah. That's their righteousness. The Greek term is dikaiosone, and that is very different because the Hebrew, that denotes a relational type of righteousness, right? That's covenantal fidelity, right? That's right order within the community, justice that restores, and it has this. It's a different feel than the Greek because the Greek is more about being right rather than doing right. It's more forensic and more legalistic. So it's more about moral status over relational fidelity. So that's the difference when you see King David and understand that he always again and again and again returns to that relational fidelity. Sure, God can see that David sins, but David will repent. David will exist in that covenantal framework, right? And that loyalty is perceived through the Hebrew mindset as, right, there's a man after God's own heart. He actually has a tenacious will to cleave to the community, to the relationship.
And that tenacity though goes even back to like Jacob wrestling, the angel and then, demanding a blessing. It's that struggle that is godliness, to search after truth, to understand who God is and to have that covenant relationship. So yeah, it's super. And I think that came out in your chapter 28. I think it was titled Biblical Worldview versus Ideology. Was that?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That was one of my favorite chapters of your book because that's been something I've been kind of like really pushing hard. And in my world and in sort of like very conservative world, they have an ideology that is very suffocating. Mm-hmm. And they'll badmouth the different ideology, right? They'll badmouth left-wing liberals or whatever, but they have their own ideology, and they're both ideological. And that's, it's like you just change the conclusions. You don't change the way you think, you change the conclusions, and you just like flip back and forth in this like bipolar spectrum, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. There's no thinking involved. It's like ideology applied. So that chapter was super good. Let me ask you this on your book though. How long did it take you from the time you decided you wanted to write a book to where you finished your final copy? How long did that take?
How long did that take? I think it took me somewhere in the range of, I'd say probably 8 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I took 8 months. Because I was always putting things down, and if I was ever gonna write a video, there would be a script or notes to go along with it. So I had a basis with which to work with, and then sometimes it would just be a case of watching a video back and thinking that was a really good point. So I'm just going to dedicate a chapter to what the contents of that video might be, add on it, embellish it.
You're archiving a lot of related material there. You've got all that stuff, but then you have an idea of like a structure of a flow of a book. And then you just basically, it took you less than a year to go from the idea concept to a manuscript.
Oh yeah. I felt like this was just on the tip of my tongue. Like I had to get it out. I just felt like I was just going to I need to get this out. I think it was the time of my life as well. I just moved from one town out of a job into another town, and I was sort of in between things, and I was looking for meaning. I was looking for something to engage myself with, and it just sort of seemed, this is the perfect time. You get time on your hands. This is the time you can dedicate yourself to this. So that's what I did. I seized the opportunity to do it. and then, had the gall to try and, email a few publishers and say, by the way, would someone be interested in having a look at this, and that's a daunting thing too, because writing a full preterist book, the answer to that question is mostly no.
Yeah. I tried it already. I did it. I contacted everybody. Jeff Vaughn and I were co-authors, and I feel like a slowpoke because, well, technically, the current Beyond Creation Science is a 3rd edition, so it's technically the 3rd try.
Yeah.
But like you, I had to have time that I had to focus on the writing and stuff. And in Montana, we have very long winters, so all of my work is seasonal with a family business, in the service business, washing windows, and in the farm side, which we all kind of do together. There's like 9 months we have to work our butts off, and then there's 2 months of bad weather plus usually, that you can just put everything aside. And so my work was like a combination of like 6 years of the same thing every year. You go to work in the wintertime on your studies, spring rolls around, you go to work outside and you put it all away, which actually worked out really well for me because I got to reflect on a lot of stuff that I did over the winter for months. And then when I came back to it the next winter, it was like start all over again, but you could form and like actually make improvements as you go. But we tried the same thing. We sent out letters to people and they're like, no, not full preterism. Sorry. Go away.
Honestly, that was a lot of what I got, to be honest. I am so like Whip and Stock. I'd never really engaged with them much. I didn't really know a lot about them, but I was genuinely surprised that we're like, okay, let's see what you got. I was like, okay, don't read it too close. Don't read it too.
Well, we figured the way we get around it is like, okay, so we're not going to get into like the normal channels, right? Okay, so that's fine. So what we did was we invested a lot in the artwork and like just really focused on like art and like the layout and making a very like appealing book from the outside. So Jeff always made the joke. He's like, yeah, I hope they judge this book by the cover.
Yeah, that's the one time you want them to do that.
But I've had many people, it's like, I'll have the book there and they will look at it. And it's like the artwork and stuff. We had Jim Kessler do our original artwork. Nice. And then a friend who did the design and stuff, Mark Chiachera, on the layout. It's really eye-catchy. It's like this poppy, picture of the temple with Noah's flood kind of, and Noah's Ark like parked in the inner courts of the temple with Sodom and Gomorrah on fire in the back. It really is catchy. But that was our plan with the artwork, because we'll just make something really cool that that people would want to go directly to, and that's what we did. So you almost have to, because the gatekeepers aren't going to let you get into their little line of things.
Well, and you know what? There it is. There's that ideology, right? And it has the gatekeepers built in, and it makes it so difficult because truth itself cannot thrive in ideological waters. They'll just drown it out. It's a very tumultuous thing in ideology, and it'll seize the bones of you, and it'll corrupt you, and it'll make you do things you didn't expect yourself to do, because it's an idol in some ways, the ideology. It's not this beautiful agape relational spiritual thing that has beautiful fruit. It's a controlling vice, and you'll see that a lot with the churches and how they'll vociferously defend their doctrine, because that's how they see themselves.
Right.
Their legitimacy comes from doctrine rather than who they are and what they do.
It's impersonal, it's cold, and it's institutional, and that's what has to be defended, because people look at the institutions as it's like, well, if we don't have the institutions, then we're not going to have any influence. We're not going to be able to take care of ourselves. We're not going to get paid, right? Institutions are like funding mechanisms too. So yeah, it's super, super bad if you have, wrong thinking at the base of all that, confessionally, or even like, as far as the, Constitution, governing stuff, you have no way of changing. It's just you're locked in. You have to leave.
Oh,
and,
you have to leave.
and a lot of these institutions, people are leaving and they are collapsing because they can't change. They're calcified. They're like brittle. There's just no way of making corrections and self-correcting along the way. But
there can be adrenaline and like, we've got them and we win and like I just loved. I put this in because I feel like this is a product of that ideology as well. Like I put in I reference a poem in the history and theological foundation section of the book, and where it's looking at this contrast between worldviews, and in it I cite a Russian poet, Vladimir Kirillov. And if I just read the first 4 stanzas off for you, get a feel for how this feels, right? So this is a Soviet, and he's looking forward to the industrial Soviet revolution because he thinks it's going to bring about the emancipation of the proletariat, right? So you've got, there he is, the savior, the lord of the earth, the master of titanic forces, and the roar of countless steel machines, the radiance of electric suns. We thought he would appear in a sunlight stole with a nimbus of divine mystery, but he came to us clad in grey smoke from the suburbs, foundries, factories. We thought he would appear in glory and glitter, meek, blessedly gentle, but he, like molten lava, came multi-face and turbulent. There he walks o'er the abyss of seas, all of steel, unyielding and impetuous. He scatters sparks of rebellious thought, and the purging flames are pouring forth. Now, Kirillov, a couple of years after writing this, was dejected and depressed because the ideology that he thought was going to save him, his iron messiah, turned out to be an iron fist. And Stalin came in and oppressed people and worked them to the bone and dehumanized and made machines out of men. That was not the freedom that he was anticipating. Now, some people say artificial intelligence is going to bring about a similar freedom. We have an AI messiah coming, but I don't think that's wise to think. Maybe it will happen. I want to be an optimist about, technology making life easier. But I think, something that I learned through, learn about your website, Covenant Gardens, is that, when you give up your autonomy and your capacity to tend for yourself and your community, you're not just giving up your soft, like these are hard skills. They're not just soft, these are hard skills in terms of how to feed yourself. But you also lose an aspect of the human condition, of your human spirit. Because, during the lockdowns, I was doing a psychology course, and one of the most beneficial things you could do during that stressful time was to be out in nature. And there's so much empirical evidence that gardening and tending a garden, if you tend a garden, it'll tend you. It will do good things for you. There's a whole realm out there of psychology called eco-psychology that studies this. So I think you're onto something with that covenant garden.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of the COVID lockdowns and stuff, that era of the year 2020 exploded our business into huge markets, into grocery stores, because the grocery stores had trouble getting various things and they wanted to go healthy as well. And, it was like, it's kind of, you almost feel a little bit, guilty about it, but it was the best thing for our business ever in my entire experience of doing this for decades and decades and decades. But, Covenant Gardens is like regenerative agriculture, like the new wave organic stuff. And we had just expanded our asparagus with a new planting. And we had, got into grocery stores where we could sell our little baby plants for people's gardens. And it was just like, we just expanded and we built a new greenhouse. We built an extra greenhouse. We expanded.
I love it.
And it's never really slowed down since, because, people really they have changed their priorities in certain ways that are healthy, on the margins. It's not necessarily a wholesale change, but we're still benefiting from that. And we like to encourage that because, for me, the theology of regeneration in Christ that is like the ultimate parallel to regenerative agriculture, which is to regenerate ecosystems and relationship between organisms and ecology, and ultimately healthy food that we're giving to our neighbors. We're serving our neighbors in this. This is gospel outworking. So at least that's my perspective.
And it heals it's a shame, it's a tragedy, the tragic fruit of Neoplatonism and Platonism, which just said, look, the world, the natural world is a sick thing, it's a ghastly thing, it's a thing to be shorn off and a thing to transcend away from.
Like the whole point of life is to escape into the invisible realm.
Yeah, escape into the invisible, rapture us, oh Lord, rapture us out of this hellscape that you put us in. It's like, no, that's not who we are as human beings. It's like the futurist lens, it distorts what we are and what we're supposed to be doing in our relationship with ourselves and this planet and our God. And it's like, so going back to, you were talking about the League of Nations creating the United Nations. The United Nations awarded a town in Scotland, it's called Elgin, but just to the north of Elgin, I think it's specifically a place called Findhorn. Very strange name, Findhorn. It's an eco village, and it's one of the first in Europe to have this sort of co-responsibility, this ecological. It's got spiritual aspects to it as well. Well, the UN, they awarded it for this sustainable living model that they've been working with. Now, here the shame is, like, if you go to Findhorn, it's not a shame, I don't mean to classify it as a shame, but it's a shame for Christians that Findhorn is very, I don't want to give it a label, but it's probably more what you would associate with New Age or just a kind of vague spirituality.
I know exactly.
And it's like, well, they have a certain hegemony when it comes to this kind of thing, because the Christians have either went extinct because all that deferred hope has just run their faith into the ground. It's not that popular here in Scotland anymore. Or, the world is just seen as this place that's going to get burnt up in fire soon anyway. So what's the point? And it's like, no, we need to remedy that. We need to fix that. And I think it happens as a natural consequence of orientation toward the truth. And actually having these eureka moments that we've been talking about and seeing, actually, it does make sense. The Higgs boson of theology has been found. We do see where it went wrong. It is entirely possible that these early church fathers got things wrong, because we know they did. We know they did. Justin Martyr, one of the earliest church fathers, he would quote things from the Hebrew scriptures that were not in the Hebrew scriptures. Arianus would... what did he do? He said Jesus was 50 years old when he died. He got the apostolic era wrong. He got the bishops out of sequence and out of order. He was a man who made mistakes. And hallelujah, I mean, we all make mistakes, but it's in the examination.
My understanding is that Augustine didn't even know Hebrew.
Cool. Yeah.
How do you put together an entire Western civilization theology from Genesis, writing City of God?
Well,
you don't even know Hebrew.
It is bizarre. It is bizarre, but this is incredible stuff. It is good to highlight, and I do believe that it is happening at the right time. None of those, like John, who would survive until Christ comes, right? According to John, was it 21, 22 or something like that? Yeah. So John survives. I don't think for a second John is anxious, thinking, I better make sure people get this eschatology right, because they might get it wrong. I think John is relaxing into his twilight years before progressing in his spiritual sojourn. The thing is, this is having to happen now, because now is the appropriate time, because now we have the means and I take my hat off. Talk about someone who dies at the hands of ideology. William Tyndale, right? What a guy, a scholar, someone who wanted to translate the Bible into English because he saw that as a freeing thing to do. He believed that the ecclesia was the congregation, right? Not just the higher ups at the church, right? That the presbyteros was elders and not just the priest class, etc. So he did his work, and what did he get for it? He got killed, and it's so sad, you know. Because of him, we say, "Let there be light." I think in the Latin, it's just fiat lux, and he's like, "Let there be light and salt of the earth," and the powers that be. These phrases come from him. That was the way he put it, and it's like, here's someone who should be something of a hero, something of a champion of the culture, but he was killed because of this ideology. So it shows you the power and potency and disease of ideology in our world. It suggests that worldview is the way forward. We need that relational, intuitive, enchanted perspective of the world, and balance is so important. And that goes back, I mean, where else is balance more important than in, you know, agriculture, right?
Well, we open up the farm, to people that want to kind of co-op with us and like get the benefits and harvest and stuff. And then they, you know, we spend a few hours every few weeks or whatever to be on the farm and kind of watch and learn and participate. And most of those people that are coming theologically have nothing in common with me, but as far as the practical life skills and values and priorities, you know, I get in conversations with them all the time, and invariably what generally they say is, I've never met a Christian like you.
Interesting, right?
You know, it's like, you know, you have to like get all the stereotypes out of the way, get all the traditional ideas out of the way, whatever, and say, yeah, they think of me as a heretic, so that's fine. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean that I don't, you know, have sincere convictions about the faith as revealed in the scriptures, Old and New Testament. So that's been my experience. They tend to be on the New Age type. They tend to be the pagan types. You know, paganism, modern paganism. There's a reason why when the Visigoths and the Vandals came and sacked Rome, they were extremely susceptible to being converted to Christianity. That's what happened, because you know biblical Christianity is very real, earthy, physical, incarnational. You know, I see that in the farm side, because regenerative agriculture is very understanding processes of the natural world and finding a place inside of that. Well, we have a lot in common on that level, and it's fascinating, because I think that is where the culture is going to go. And, you know, the Christians in our culture are, you know, corporate interests, money making, you know, they're sort of in that market idea of factory farm in my particular world. But it's like, it's like this suburbanite definition of, you know, the good life as Christianity. And it's suburbanized. It's like, it's, you know, it's just sort of like crazy. But that's where the future is. And I think that preterism has that relational key that is the health that comes from the soil up. Because in regenerative agriculture, you're always trying to develop health from inside out, from the soil up to everything else. And that's where the true health comes from, rather than pouring chemicals in, or, you know, having very aggressive and intrusive techniques that end up destroying, you know, communal structure and relationships that are already there, that are already doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's what I see. The Christians aren't really, I mean, there's some few exceptions. Joel Salatin is one exception in the American scene, but in the American scene on this front of local food, you know, there's this huge variety of different people, and they're all local, right? And they supported by their local community. So they have this sort of distinctive fingerprint from wherever they come from. And even it's different from like out west to like back east, it's different. And down south, it's very interesting. It's very decentralized. And of course, we're trying to get, you know, some kind of some legislation needs to happen so that we have more freedom on the small scale to compete with the giants. Agribusinesses and stuff. So there is some like legislation that needs to be done. But ultimately, a lot of us are like transcending politics, because it just doesn't fit with what we're trying to do. It at best, it's in the way. When it becomes political, you end up like becoming irrelevant in the freedom to actually do what needs to be done in front of you. So
listen, there's just so much truth in what you've been saying, and it's almost like here we go again, because when you describe the landscape as is, it's almost like we're going back into pagan Druid times, and that was the culture in Scotland when Christianity first arrived. We have big names like Saint Columba, Saint Ninian, and even my hometown Kilbirnie is named after Saint Brennan. The kill part comes from a cell, which would be a monastic chapel that would be set up. Just a very rudimentary small thing. And that was back in the days where, Scotland and Ireland didn't exist as separate entities. There was the kingdom of Dalriada, and you could go from Kerry in Ireland and come over to Scotland and you haven't left home. And so it was part of his cult, is what they would call it. There's a lot of negative connotations to that word, but it was just St. Brendan's cult. He had a few people come over and set up churches, and the people would be receptive, and it was earthy. It was salt of the earth, to quote Tyndale. It was wholesome and enchanting and lived. And I can understand why these pagan-like people take to it, because they're experiencing Christianity in an embodied form, not as an abstract, not as a Greek philosophical concept. No, as a lived practice. And oh my goodness, I have a dream in my head. I was speaking to I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Rogers. He's a young
I have
YouTuber.
met Daniel a couple of times. We've had many conversations over the years. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think he's down in Alabama, in the southeast, if I remember right.
Yeah. I was speaking to him on a call recently, and he described this beautiful scene in a barn, and it was the atmosphere in the barn of these people coming together in that setting in particular, which is an agricultural setting, and there's real food to be eaten. There's song, there's music. Everybody's bringing a little something to them, and it's communal. And I think that is what people are so hungry for, something real and something communal, and you can't fake it. And I feel like the ideologies of the world do, through accident or purpose, atomize us. They atomize us. We have put too much in the individual. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with individualism. It can be good, but on balance, we also need community, right? I should be meeting family members quite regularly. I should be meeting neighbours quite regularly. And one of the people who's brought this agriculture thing into the centre of the cultural conversation, he's a bit Marmite on this side, but you might know him from the TV show Top Gear. His name's Jeremy Clarkson.
No, I'm not familiar. I don't watch much TV.
No, well, he's kind of niche, but he's like a car guy in the same spirit as who's the talk show host who's a car guy in America. He's I forget his name now. Somebody will be shouting at the screen. They know exactly what I'm talking about. Grey hair guy. He's a talk show host. It's Jimmy Kimmel. No, forget it. But Jeremy Clarkson has started an Amazon Prime show called Clarkson's Farm, and he shows the difficulty that the people can have with these small farmsteads trying to get things right. And then when it rains too much and the saturation of the soil, and you can't harvest the wheat when it's too moist, and then you've got people coming in and trying to find ways to retain I don't know if it's carbon or what you want to retain in the soil.
Yeah, we're looking for sequestration of carbon to build soil biology. That's kind of the short end, but that brings in a lot of other things. And there's a regenerative aspect that you have to kind of purify land that has been contaminated at the same time.
Okay,
so there's certain things you can grow to do that, to actually remediate lands. But ideally you would be able to start with fresh land or clean land and then kind of develop it from there. We were blessed here in God's providence. We bought an Amish farm here in Montana that had been Amish for many years. So I know for a fact that we are going on about let's see, probably 30 years of no chemical inputs, no synthetic fertilizers, no
Wow.
pesticides, et cetera. So
Mm,
we're seeing really good results from that, and people love
wow.
our stuff. I mean, we can't produce enough even for our smaller. I don't live in a big city area. It's like small towns kind of spread out. So we're grocery stores mainly, but um,
I
we we can't produce enough for demand.
I love what you do, and I love that you invite people to come in and to do some work and get some experience. Because in Scotland, I imagine it's a bit like, in terms of not like climate, but in geography, you got a city like Bozeman,
Right.
and here in Scotland, you have a city like Glasgow, and very quickly, you're no longer in the city. You start driving for 20 minutes
Right.
outside of Bozeman,
Yeah.
you're in the wilderness. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same in Scotland. Like you drive 20 minutes outside the city, it's farmland. It is
Right.
open land. And the real shame of it is I cannot tell you the name of a single farmer. And it's all fields. It's all fields. And
Right.
there's a community of 7,000 people here in Kilburney, and it's all farms round about.
Well,
I
most
can't
most likely, most likely, it's a big corporation that there is no individual farmer involved. It's a conglomerate, right? And so
well, this is yeah.
the big corporations buy everything out and they run everything. So you have basically just tenants who are working for the corporation and producing factory farmed products. So that's kind of how it is. But where are you in Scotland? Are you in a city, or are you kind of like in a middle range or country, or what's your setup?
Mid, yeah, it's like mid-range to country. So I'm about 15 miles outside of Glasgow, but it becomes quite urban quite quickly as you drive north from here. You hit Paisley, which is a big town, a big industrial town, and then Glasgow, and there's a port, and that port was, very industrious at the height of the empire back in the glory days now. But
Right, right, right.
um, but there's to be honest, Scotland has fallen so far from any kind of prosperity. It is quite desperate with its
Right,
child poverty. So there's a
right,
lot of poverty that way, and there's a lot of drug addiction. So, and more so than you might think of, like, you might think Eastern Europe probably has the worst kind of problems with addiction and stuff because of the Soviet incursion that's affected their society, etc. No, it's Scotland. Scotland has the worst addictions and drug deaths in Europe. It might even be in the world, actually. There was a time
mm,
where the life expectancy in some communities in Glasgow was like 54 years old, which was uh, less than Burkina Faso at the time.
right,
But it just goes to show, there are issues in Scottish society. It's getting better, don't get me wrong, but there are still these big issues that cannot be explained economically.
right,
There is a spiritual malnutrition, right? Because there's less prosperous countries in the world than Scotland, but Scotland has these maladies that I do believe have a spiritual essence to them. There's something that's just, and I think that speaks to the secularism of Scotland. And then there's a subtle hint of reinvigoration, but the problem with the reinvigoration of the Christian sort of mindset is I feel like it's being positioned as a bulwark against other forms of religion that are starting to form in society. And I
right.
don't like that. I understand it and I feel it, but I don't necessarily think that's the right spirit with which to approach your faith. Like, oh, I'm
Sure.
going to conveniently become something to stop something I don't
Yeah.
like.
In a
It's like, well,
negative light. Yeah, in a negative sort of orientation. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm wary of that, but I do think for some people there is a meaning crisis, right? And that goes back to the work of Viktor Frankl, who was
Yep.
an American neurologist and
I'm
a
familiar with
psychiatrist.
his book.
Yeah, yeah. He was so great in how meaning making can be found through responsibility, and you can find those responsibilities through things like worship. But I think that a good way to worship is exactly what you're describing with that agricultural work, with regenerative agriculture, because everything that you say in a regenerative agricultural context is a metaphor for spiritual truth, right? I feel like Jesus often made references, or the apostles would make reference to plant matter, to
Yep.
seeds, to vines, to it's very arboreal and plant-like and of the earth. And, when Jesus would look at the flowers and say, Solomon and all his riches was not arrayed like this, and it's like, Jesus had this poetic essence to him that engaged with the world and nature. He went off alone to pray. There's something necessary, I would say, about engagement with humanity, with the earth.
Well, I could say by experience, I've learned more about theology in the day-to-day farm experience and like looking at things very, very closely than many other things and many other books. I mean, there is a, and it's kind of cool because you start learning to know what to look for when you're close to it. And a lot of people are disconnected from agriculture. So everything would be foreign to them. It'd be like overload. They wouldn't see stuff. But if you live in a very close relationship to the agriculture and you understand the cycles, the rhythms of the year cycles of seasons and times and planting times and harvest times and everything else, sometimes you find that the more close you look at things, the more you learn as well. There's always more there. And once you realize that, you have sort of a reason to believe that, hey, if I take the effort and look closer, we're going to find more things here. And that's a lesson that, to me, it's almost like that's a lesson that you need to go into the Bible as well, because the scriptures are an ecosystem too, and you can look at it from 30,000 feet, just the standard Christian presentation, Sunday school lesson or whatever. But there's always more there if you just look closer and learn more. And that's a skill you learn in agriculture, especially. You learn that skill by doing. You don't learn it by going to college. And that's where a lot of these farms, the little guys that are doing what we're doing, they may have education, they may have agriculture education, or they may not. And it doesn't matter because they're learning in real time in a real place. So it's fascinating.
You can't fake it. That is just so real. And what I noticed, right, is that not only that, but people who have come in, these people that are coming in who are not of the faith, see how you operate, and they notice that something extra about you, because suddenly you hear things like, you're not like other Christians. And what they're saying, what's implicit in that is that, oh, you're authentic. You're the real deal.
We had a lady come and do a magazine article on our farm last year. I'll put a link in the show notes here. And she grew up Roman Catholic.
Wow.
So I had some ability to have a conversation for it, but she kept asking questions about the theology. And it was like, well, I really don't hold this idea of like one theology imperially dominating another theology. That doesn't really fit with my farm work either. It's like you let the life kind of grow. And it was kind of funny. It took her a while to figure that out because she kept asking questions. What do you believe about this? What do you believe about this? And, she's a very agriculture girl, and Montana is like ranching, farming, and stuff like that. So it was just funny, but she read a great article because I really just pressed this idea of covenant relationship being the center of human experience. And it's also the center of biological experience as well. And this is the way it goes together. And this is what the Bible talks about. So it was a completely secular magazine. It was Edible Bozeman over there in the big town, Bozeman, Montana. But I was able to talk theology in the context and in the enfleshed existence of what we do with the regenerative agriculture. It was just funny. But the same thing, like you're saying, is like people just don't they have this idea of what a Christian is from whatever experience that they have, or maybe they went to Sunday school, at the Baptist church or at the Roman Catholic church, or maybe they're, even like Mormon or whatever. We have a lot of Mormons in this area too. So it's like, they have all these conceptions and it's like, I don't really fit that.
I like that. Now, there is something very different about us and something that I would aspire to and something I want for myself, and I've delayed it not deliberately, just through the consequences of life. So I just had a 37th birthday, and I don't have a wife. I don't have children. I would like to, I feel. You do. You
Yeah.
do. Can you explain, like, how does that shape you? How does that inform you? Does having a family, does your relationship with your wife become part of the theology, become part of
Sure.
the lived experience? Like,
It's sort of complicated in the sense that you have two different people married in one relationship, so you have a lot of things going on with different things. My wife and I married in 1995. We
nice.
met at a American Vision conference with Gary DeMar. So we had
Wow.
like theologically at the time, right, very open to preterism, kind of reformational theology, very conservative, very evangelical. But since then, we've had 9 children together, and
Right.
we have 3 children left full time in our household. So they're going away as fast as they came. And that's we didn't really expect that. But to get to your question, it does change you. I'm really unique in that respect because we have the farm and we have the family business that children make a lot of sense in our daily life
Sure.
for
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
And of course, we're not just trying to like breed slaves, right? So we want them to learn we want to learn the experience of like
Yeah.
responsibility, money management, like entrepreneurship, like initiative, and like thinking things through. So, I have my oldest son is married. He's in a town over. He's got 4 children. So we have 4 grandchildren.
Nice. Wow. That's so cool.
I have another son who's engaged to be married in July. And then I have a daughter who just got engaged who's planning to get married in 2027.
Oh
So
man, that's so nice.
it's like this popcorn thing going, right? Like the first one pops, and then you're like, uh-oh.
I mean,
So yeah, it's a
I don't
lot.
know. I don't know
But
how that's even possible because you don't look a day over 30, so I don't know how it's possible.
well, I'm blessed in that respect.
Yeah, there
We
you
stay
go.
really active. We're very active lifestyle. But
I like it.
our youngest is coming up on 13. Next year she'll
Wow,
turn
really?
13.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
we still have young ones at home and everything, and they go through their pattern of what they really like, and they gravitate toward their personality. And the whole idea is to develop the personality so
right. Okay.
that they pursue what they enjoy and they find their place in the world. That's really the
Oh,
overarching idea of family and
yeah.
parenting idea. So we have kind of a hands-off culture. Montana is very libertarian in that respect. So,
Mhm.
it kind of fits with the culture of, and from, for some of my background in the Southeast, this would be like, you don't let your children do that. You don't let your children do that.
Of course.
Right. So,
Aye.
so I got over that sort of legalistic idea a long time ago with the kids, and they really, I don't think they would have suffered from that because we were way out of that from the beginning.
Mhm.
I had to rethink a lot of stuff from my childhood on that
Yeah.
fundamentalist idea, obviously with creation science and that theology. But it does change you. I think there's a lot of responsibility. It can be tiring. It can be overwhelming because
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
there's a lot of things. But we've been blessed, and the kids participate and help us become productive and financially, solid because they play their role in the businesses, in the farm, in the day-to-day life. So it's a mutual thing. And the children, I've got 2 sons in California right now doing computer programming. I,
Oh,
I think I,
fantastic.
I think I work them too hard. Actually, that's one of my problems. Is they figure out, oh, it's a computer. I can make money like working on the computer and program, use my head, right? And then
Yeah. Yeah.
one's in robotics, um,
Nice.
and AI stuff, and he tells me stories.
Yeah.
Another one's kind of an apprentice in that whole field as well. One's in San Francisco, one's in LA, but
Excellent.
that's they do well. I don't really, I don't pay attention to the details of exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's got struggles and stuff that they've got to deal with, but
Sure. Sure.
in this climate and economy and like relationship issues. But I my goal is functional, productive children, and the way you do that is you learn by doing. So we start them out like I'll have
Right.
my 10-year-old child will be up on a roof washing windows with me, right? In a
Yeah.
certain circumstances, okay. People would freak about that. You know, some customers they don't want that. You don't bring your kid, right? He's too young, too young. All right, so you got to learn. You learn where context is okay, where context is not okay. But we try to
Yeah.
start them young for that very reason.
Oh, fantastic.
And they just get ahead. You know, they're ahead. I've got a daughter in college in Butte, Montana, next town over. So they just go.
But they just go because you're giving them these competencies and these exposures to these incredible experiences that are just setting them up for life. I'm curious, right? Because you got adult children. What, like, how do you go, or maybe you don't, from perceiving your child as, let's say, your oldest son is from your wee boy to here's just a guy? Like, what's going on? Like, does that happen? Is it always just like?
No, I start approaching them. I learned a long time ago, really, you have to love your neighbors yourself. You have to apply that to your children.
Right? Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of parents, they have this idea, like almost like property, right? You're my kid, you do what I tell you, right?
Yeah,
but that's not modeling the gospel in a healthy way.
No.
You want to know why they want to run away? Well, you got to put them in that environment. So I thought this through quite a bit with my younger children. You know, I really do view them as loving your neighbor as yourself. They are your neighbor. They are your brother and sister from a very young age. Sure, you know, they have roles they have to play and they have to be obedient in the context of various things. They have to be trained, but I've always viewed them, even from a very young age, as sort of like on my level. Like sometimes I talk to them, I'll get down on my knees and like talk to them like at the same level, right? That's all part of the mindset. So when they turn 30, my oldest turns 30 in 6 days.
Nice.
5 days. Big day for him.
Yeah, fantastic.
Right. So he's, you know, if I have a question on computers, I know who to go to. You know, they come over to the farm. They're 30 minutes away from the farm. They bring the kids. Kids play all weekend long on the farm. You know, go dig in the dirt, go in the barn, all that stuff. So it's just a relationship thing. But that starts with they're young. I think that starts with applying gospel relationship priorities from the beginning. And same with my wife. Same with the wife. We have disagreements, but you still have to like, you know, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting that that's in your mind as you are growing into being a parent, as you're thinking about these kind of gospel principles and asking these deeper questions about how to relate to another person. I think that's incredible. Honestly, I think that makes you an amazing role model, and like people, you know, should be thankful for that.
People have typically viewed that as like, well, we go to church, right? So if you go to church on Sunday morning every week, then that's Christian family. Or maybe that you may go to Sunday school, you learn about, you know, family order or whatever they're organized they are. But I kind of abandoned all of that thinking a long time ago. And I was involved in congregational ministry, so I see the need for it. And I think it is healthy when it's done right, but it's also very toxic if it's not done right.
100%, man. Then it's all the ideology and politics.
Having a congregation, going to a congregation isn't the solution by itself. It's got to be healthy. And that's super important in my thinking. So I don't know, beyond that, it's enjoyable. You kind of see, I mean, for me, the best part of the fatherhood and parenting is watching the kids really pursue things that they enjoy and watching them be successful. That's like the ultimate like thrill on my end. And I don't even have to be involved. Right? I'm just watching. Right.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of this too, you got to give those kids up to God from the beginning too. I mean, we live in an environment that's dangerous, you know, farming is dangerous. You have to say from the beginning, you know, these kids are God's gift.
Yeah.
He gives and he takes away. So, you know, there have been illnesses that are scary.
Yeah,
been, situations. I work on ladders a lot with window cleaning.
yeah.
Naturally a dangerous profession, and the kids are involved, and the kids are they're running crews, they're managing stuff. So
100%.
you pray a lot.
A lot of prayer, a lot of prayer. But that's just
that will definitely come along with the wife and children part.
yeah. But that just shows a certain maturity of character that's been growing in you, I feel, to have been considering the relational aspect of it, the God in all of this, the idea that a child is a child of God as well as a child of, like, you get to be involved in this wonderful, beautiful work of creation, right? You get to co-create with God.
Absolutely.
But very much their relationship with God is also a real tangible thing too. And when you get down to their level and speak to them with such respect, it's like you are acknowledging their relationship with God through that respect. And it's like, to me, it's why I asked you this question, because you're informing me very, very sadly. My dad passed away in 2008.
I remember you talking about that on the live streams and stuff. So I followed all the details.
Right. Yeah. So,
yeah,
I haven't had that kind of paternal influence for a while. So when I can get it, I'll ask about it. So genuinely, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I think, and hopefully other people as well can get something from that,
Yeah. No, I appreciate you. This book it came out in the summertime. And I'm really, really busy in the summertime. So I couldn't do anything with this book until after our season wrapped up. Now that was top of my list. It was your book to do a review, and I was trying to get you on the interview too. And do you have any more ideas as far as what you're planning? What's next for Willy? I see you're making progress on the YouTube channel. I see new presentations. Like
this is it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to maintain that. I'm trying to make these snappy short videos just on the main video side of the channel. I'm going to keep that up. Audiences seem to really respond to that quite nicely. I'll keep doing that, doing things like this as well as getting on the agenda as well. Like when you tried to get a hold of me the first time, like a year ago, and I was all shy, but I'm not coming out with shell, so I'm going to do more of this.
I kept bugging you though. I was like, okay, I'll wait till the next video. I'll hit him again with another comment. Hey, Willy.
Well, I'll tell you, I have the ambition to come to America and make it a kind of frequent feature, so I want to come out to America and meet people and do things. So God willing, I will meet you in person at some point. We'll make that video.
We're gonna do, Steve Magua and I are partners on the conferences that we do. We did the Montana conference this summer back in July, and that was actually the third conference that Steve Magua has done. And we're planning the fourth one now, the Gateway Conference in St. Louis, Missouri. That would be July of next year, 2026. So maybe plan for like coordinating your time with a good conference and come on over, because we're going to have like a 4-day event, have 6 or 7 speakers, and we're just going to stay in the same environment and have that spiritual connection in the preterist community of people. A lot of people have been kicked out of churches. They've been, they've had their own nightmare scenarios. So we wanted to have fellowship first. That was really the idea behind the Montana conference. We were here for 4 days, and the sites and the activities that can be done in Montana. So we did like evening sessions with like daytime free to go stuff. So keep that in mind, because we'd love to meet you up in person and
well, absolutely. I'm so glad that you're helping to arrange those things, because I'd asked Don Preston, because he used to do a certain conference. I forget what he called it.
Preterist Pilgrim Weekend.
Yes.
Ardmore, Oklahoma. I went twice. Yeah.
You went twice. Fantastic. Yeah. What was it like?
It was amazing, because there's like 150 people there or whatever it was. It was like lots of people. Now we tend to be on the younger side of some of them there with that group, but there's younger preterists. There's younger preterists coming in now. We had a good age spread even in Montana last July. So different conferences are going to basically cater to the different kinds of groups of people in the preterist community, because there are subgroups within the community itself. But yeah, we'll definitely put the word out on that. I'll leave a link if anybody wants to look at, what the events are coming up. But we're coming up. We're actually over an hour now, Willie, and we were going to go for an hour. So I'm going to tell everybody, go buy WillieT's book, Full Preterism Ignored But Fulfilled, How the Church Missed the End of the World. You can see my book review on this channel as well. And, I appreciate it, Willie, for coming on, and maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've enjoyed this a lot. So thank you.
All right, blessings. Well, hang on a sec. We'll talk afterwards.